Also a symbol of Detroit's ongoing efforts toward blight removal and expanding beautification across the city's neighborhoods. Since the mayor's very first address in 2014, the city has gone through a rebirth of sorts. We've seen a historic rise in property values, the largest construction boom since the 1950s, and the lowest unemployment rate in more than 2 decades. On this significant 10-year address, the mayor will review how major development projects have played an important role in the city's revenue growth, his plan to reduce gun violence downtown, and he'll also discuss plans to redirect more funds toward the creation of affordable housing all around the city. We turn now to the man himself, Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan, with his live State of the City address.
Here in this beautiful setting for the first time in decades, I just want to say thank you for being with us, because we're going to get a chance to talk about where we've been and where we're going. This site is historic. It started work on this very place in 1910. It was an engineering marvel. And when it opened in 1913, 110 years ago, was a building of great beauty. It was a place that connected Detroiters to the world, and hundreds of thousands of visitors a year were greeted by the beauty of our city. This was their first impression of Detroit when they came to town. But in 1988, after years of decline, the last train left the Michigan Central Depot. And we know what the station looked like, abandoned inside and out. And on April 9, 2009, Detroit City Council voted 7-1 to order the demolition. Had that vote gone through, we wouldn't be standing here today. But what happened next probably going to surprise you a little, because the people who blocked the demolition were the Maroons, who fought back and said, we think this building has value. They succeeded in holding off the demolition, but at the time I got elected in 2014, it was still sitting here empty. And one thing I knew for sure, I was not ever going to see this beautiful station demolished. And I believed if people could just see what it would look like, we'd generate interest. And so when the Maroons wanted some property, I said, I'll make you a deal, but here's what I want. I want you to spend $4 million and put windows in this empty train station. And he said, what? But they did it. And I got criticized by pretty much everybody in town. Somebody called it putting lipstick on a pig. Except when the windows went in, the effect on this city was electric. Everybody was talking about what that train station could be and could somebody use it. But outside the train station, there was a lot bigger battle brewing. And that was for the future of the auto industry. In 2017, all the national automotive commentators said Silicon Valley is the future. Cars are now computer on wheels. Google's going to build cars. Apple's going to build cars. Tesla's going to build cars. Detroit is in the dustbin of history. The future of the automotive industry is all shifting to Silicon Valley. But I came in singularly focused to say I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that doesn't happen. And we fought back every step of the way. And the first step forward was Mary Barra and Mark Royce, who decided to take what we used to call the Poletown plant and create Factory Zero, a $2 billion investment from GM in its first all-electric factory in America. People said, wow, electric vehicles in Detroit. And then Waymo, Google's operation, had to pick a place to start to assemble their self-driving vehicles. And we went head-to-head with Silicon Valley, and Waymo said, we're going to build this in Detroit at the American Axle facility. And people said, wait, Google's building their cars in Detroit? But we knew what the real prize was, because Bill Ford and the Ford Motor Company had made it clear they were going to compete. They were going to change the way they design vehicles. They were going to find a new location that was going to be an environment for the youngest and creative and best innovators, and they were going to get away from their headquarters and go somewhere. And Bill Ford could have gone to Silicon Valley. He could have gone to Ann Arbor. But he picked right here in the city of Detroit. And he didn't just build one building, he's building a campus. Next door, that building under the arrow is an innovation center. It's not just for Ford employees. Any startup, any mobility company can come in there. Ford's got this idea that you collaborate with the other companies. And you see that yellow road there, that's 14th Street? Under that yellow road, we are building with the state's partnership the first public charging road in America. It's going to use the technology that does wireless charging on your iPhone. The coils in that picture are going to go underneath, which means that when you park your car there or drive your car there, your electric car will recharge while it's on the street. And all the mobility companies who locate there, they can actually test out their newest inventions right on the street outside. And then with Governor Whitmer's help, out on Michigan Avenue, we are building the first dedicated autonomous vehicle lane in America. I don't know, you like that? I don't know when the feds are going to make declare it safe enough, but I do know this: when they do open it, this will be the first line, and it'll be filled with Cruise Origins built at Factory Zero in the city of Detroit, and Waymo self-driving vehicles in the city of Detroit, in America's first automated vehicle lane. And so all those national pundits who are saying you're going to Silicon Valley, the auto industry, well, now with Stellantis moving to National Jeeps, here's what they're saying: Detroit the next Silicon Valley. How Detroit passed Silicon Valley. Detroit rising from the ashes. And here's last month's Newsweek: U.S. automakers aim to make Detroit the next Silicon Valley. We took them out head to head, and we're building the future right here in the city of Detroit. But here's what's different about planning in Detroit today. We don't just plan one building. We plan a whole neighborhood. And we do it through a community benefits process where the neighbors get to approve the plan. We're building a cork town for everyone, 600 new units of affordable housing. We've got 48 units being built right now in left field of Old Tiger Stadium. You can see Cliff Brown building a 78-unit apartment complex. You see how close it is to the station. This is the neighborhood that we're building. Our longtime residents who lived in Section 8 in Clement Kearns Gardens and were afraid they were going to be pushed out, we are building them all new facilities, guaranteeing that all the residents who are there can move into the beautiful new buildings with no rent increase. That's the neighborhood that we are building. And as Ford comes in, we are doubling the number of Section 8 housing in the neighborhood. There is not another city in the country that does that, because this is what we want to do. And every time I see Jim Farley, he says, don't forget, our building is the gateway to Southwest Detroit. So I'm proud of the fact we took Bagley down behind the train station and built it into this new beautiful streetscape, and that we are helping start new businesses like AGI Construction to create Tech Hub right here in the neighborhood. And that the Detroit Hispanic Development Corporation's Phantasma Market is here spotlighting local entrepreneurs, products, and services. We can bring in new people while still embracing those who were already here. And we're not just doing this in Corktown. I will always be appreciative of those 250 families who hosted me in 2013 in their homes and talked about our neighborhood used to be so nice. We used to have street lights. There weren't all these abandoned buildings. And I said to them, I really do believe every neighborhood has a future. And the folks who hosted me and who believed, who stayed in their homes, it seemed impossible. 40,000 vacant houses we had to knock down. But with the help of the Obama administration and the people of Detroit passing Proposal N, our progress is dramatic. Jerry Kavanaugh and the council promised to rid Detroit of abandoned homes in 1965. And here we are 60 years later, and I won't tell you we're at the end, but we've reached the beginning of the end. And here's why I say that. The land bank owned 47,000 vacant houses when I got here. Today, they own 7,000. And how did we do it? We knocked down 24,000, but we sold and rehabbed 16,000. We had lots of good houses in this community. And last year, we reached a tipping point I've been waiting for a long time. We actually rehabbed more houses than we demolished. Imagine that. The value in the city is now in moving in, not in moving out. Selling 200 a month at buildingdetroit.org, and you know how I love these pictures. But I am so much more proud of the houses we save than the houses we knocked down. Isn't it great? And on Prairie, how it looked and how it looks today. And on Livernois, it looked like that, and I was really glad to join the Barajas family on their first day moving in. This is what we have done 16,000 times. So we will be through the land bank 7,000 abandoned houses sometime next year. But we've still got private abandoned houses. We've got 5,000 more, and we're going to start to move on more and more to those. They're more legally complicated, but if you live next door to a vacant house, there's people going in and out, you're afraid that house is going to catch on fire and spread to your house. You actually don't care if the land bank owns it or it's in a private owner. You just want to be safe. And so we are going to now move this year and next year into dealing with these private homes with the goal of getting every vacant house out of the city by the end of 2025. But the blight efforts did something really amazing. After 17 straight years of declining home values, we turned it around. My first couple years, it was kind of uneven. This is a map of the change in home values. The white areas, there were very few sales in. The red areas, the prices, the home values went down. The light green, they went up some. And you could see it was hit and miss. Let me show you this year's map. All across the city, the home values have doubled and tripled in the last 5 years. This is what I meant when I said every neighborhood has a future, and we're seeing it start to come true. We also finally returned to the historic status of majority homeowner city, which had been a proud tradition in the city of Detroit. And this may be the thing I'm most proud of. Zillow came out with a national study last month and talked about the areas and where the value of black homeownership was rising the fastest. And they say while the gap between the value of black homeownership and white homeownership is still too great, there are some places in the country where that gap is closing, where the black ownership value in the properties is rising faster in the suburban areas, and #1 in America in the last 3 years in closing the gap between home ownership between black and white in value is the city of Detroit. So I'd like to tell you, we're all set, right? The job is finished? Oh no, we're just getting started. I got 10 more steps we're going to take because we are at a point now we can build the kind of neighborhoods we all wanted. This year, we're going to clear another 1,000 alleys. We've got 2,000 down. This will be another 1,000. Next year, we'll finish. We've doubled the DPW cleanups. The garbage is always dumped. You see them on the vacant lots around the city. And if in the last few months you've looked around and said, you know, it seems like there's less garbage on the vacant lots, there is. We doubled the number of cleanings, and this is a great time to thank all 9,000 city workers. They've been out there summer, winter, delivering just great service. But we aren't going to get rid of all this stuff unless you know when to put the bulk out. So I'm fed up with people asking me, what day does the bulk go out? How does it go out? So next year, our garbage contract is up. We're going out for bids right now. And next year, we will return to every week bulk pickup the same day as your garbage pickup. We're going to spend $25 million to replace 70,000 broken sidewalk slabs. Ordinarily, that's the responsibility of the homeowner, but we got so many vacant lots with so many busted sidewalks, and to say to the children, the seniors, and disabled, we can't do anything about it. We're going to start today. We're going to expand the neighborhood beautification program. And I know there are people in this community who like the mayor and the council to fight. This is an interesting council. I've never had a council where so many council members have so many ideas they want to get done. And the next few I'm going to show you didn't come from me, they came from the council. But this project actually came from Council President Mary Sheffield, who wanted to take these funds and put them in. We gave $500,000 to 34 block clubs, and you can apply. Let me show you the kind of projects. These weren't necessarily from the latest program, but they show you what neighbors can do. The neighbors from Cooper Street, 14th Street, Berner, they all created peace tree parks in their neighborhood. The beauty of this is we're not having people come from out of town to do this. This is a way where the neighbors can decide what you want in your neighborhood, take the land bank property, have grants to do it. And so the Canfield Consortium, they wanted a community park. Isn't it nice? And the North Goldward community, here's the kind of park that they built. This is what you can do in your neighborhood. $500,000 more are going to be awarded, and your deadline to apply is March 17th. There is still time to do this in your neighborhood. We have a tremendous affordable housing program. But council member Letitia Johnson says, we got a lot of folks in houses who the rents are going up, and they actually want to rent a house. What we don't have is a plan to take the abandoned land bank houses and turn them into affordable houses. And so in May, we are going to roll out a plan where we take land bank houses and go to CDOs, neighborhood nonprofits, churches, and the like. We will give you the house, put up to $75,000 into that house if you promise to rent it out or sell it to a person of low income, so we can move low income families into the single family homes and mix them into the neighborhoods. And then Scott Benson. He calls it efficient transfer of wealth. Other people call it tangled titles, but everybody in this room is going to know what I'm talking about. You live in a house and your parents or your grandparents left it for you, except they never actually put it through probate. And you don't technically have the title. And it can be really difficult to get a mortgage or to sell the house. And so what Councilman Benson is proposing is that when the heirs agree, the city will provide legal services. We'll be your lawyer, get that title cleared up, so that when you've earned that wealth, you can pass it on and you can keep it. And beyond that, we'll provide educational materials so other families can do it. We have this huge buildup in the value of the property values in our houses. Let's make sure that they're passed on to the next generation. We've got $30 million going in to replace 2,000 roofs, to repair the homes of low-income seniors and disabled residents. You will see homes being repaired in folks who just didn't have the means to do it all across this city. Motor City Makeover every year was where we would go out and clean up dump sites. This May, we're going to be out those 3 weekends, but instead, we're distributing 90,000 flowers on that day. We're going to bring beauty to the neighborhood instead of talking about blight. All these things I told you about, you want to know how they work? They're all on the city website. DetroitMI.gov, there's a mayor state of the city speech. So if you saw one of those programs and you said, I want to do this in my neighborhood, I want to find something about it, you can go to this page right now and see the exact details on how to sign up. But here's the thing that for the neighborhoods that think they've been forgotten, may be the most transformational. We're turning 27 miles of some of the worst dump sites in Detroit, and we are turning them into the new Joe Louis Greenway. These are neighborhoods that backed up to abandoned railway right-of-ways and tires and garbage for years, and now this is what they're going to get in their backyards. It started near the riverfront, and the Riverfront Conservancy does such a great job with the DeQuinder Cut. And in November, we opened the next phase from Warren to Joy, one of the largest play structures in America. This year, we're building north to Fulton. Here's how it looks right now. Doesn't look the greatest, but here's how it's going to look by the summer. And then, County Executive Warren Evans is here with his support. We're going to cut across Highland Park and connect up with the states working in Hamtramck in 2024. That's what he's going to do to Highland Park. So that by 2025, you can see the pieces starting to come together. By 2027, they will be built all the way out. But I will say this again. This is not about a place to ride bikes or walk. This is about neighborhoods that have been forgotten. I have been in that Tireman and Livernois neighborhood so many times going back to 2013. They said nobody cares about us. The city never comes down here. And I have been just so proud in the last year to go into the neighborhoods who thought they weren't important to see. They have now got one of the most beautiful developments they could have. And here's the real impact. We've taken more than 23,000 tires and 100,000 tons of debris out of their backyards. And you're going to get a chance to hear from somebody who's lived in this neighborhood near Tireman and Livernois for more than 50 years. We designed the Joe Louis Greenway with the participation of the neighbors, and I'd like you now to hear their story.
The Joe Louis Greenway is everything to our community.
Before the Greenway, there were abandoned cars. It was a dump site. And to look at it now, it's amazing. This is what I remember growing up. we take care of our neighborhoods.
When we found out that the Joe Louis Greenway was coming through the neighborhood, we were very excited for the neighborhood to thrive, for there to be new businesses to come over.
People who live here now see the value in fixing up a property, and they moving in again.
I purchased this house from the Detroit Land Bank, and for me to live on the Greenway, it represents hope for me. My neighbors and friends, they came out to help me clean out the yard, and it was such a blessing. Woohoo! It humbled me to feel the love of the community. I can't even put it into words how much it means to me. I plan on fully restoring the house. I just want to make this my home.
Working through this to really see what goes into doing something of this magnitude, the city sent 7 individuals to Atlanta so that we could see what this could bring to the city of Detroit. So when we came back, that's when we decided that we needed to also inform our community and let them see the potential of this.
We got together when we made the Greenway Heritage Conservancy. We made sure that the neighbors knew. We threw community events.
It just takes one person to affect the beginning of a change.
I love bike riding. Getting on the Greenway just blocks from my home. It's a feeling of freedom. It represents some place that you can be proud of.
The heart of the Joe Louis Greenway is really the people. Also, it's the heart of the people who work at City Hall to make this happen.
So for how many years have you heard people say all the investment is downtown and midtown? Now there's hundreds of millions of dollars going into the neighborhoods where it should be, and it's an exciting time to be here. But the most important thing we can do for every neighborhood is to make them safer. And our shootings are dropping from their COVID surge peak, but they're not fast enough. We know what happened during COVID. It happened all across the country. The criminal justice system shut down. You couldn't have a jury trial because you couldn't put 12 jurors into a panel during COVID. And as a result, you've had 3 years of cases backed up, and there wasn't any room in the jail. So you've got people on the streets who were charged with shooting people 2 and 3 years ago, not just in Detroit, but around the country. There has not been accountability. But the problem has been compounded in Detroit because the police were not being paid competitive wages, and we had 300 officers. Our police officers are outstanding, but too many times we're having to cover their shifts. During overtime, we had more than 200 people quit last year, and that was why I was really pleased when I saw last fall the revenue assumptions I was hoping for. The ones that showed our income tax revenues are exploding with all of this growth. And the very first priority we had was to give a $10,000 raise to our police officers to make them competitive with the surrounding city. Really pleased to see a 9-0 vote out of City Council back in that police department. And here's the results we'd hoped for. 27 officers graduated from the academy 2 weeks ago. They're on the street. More importantly, 25 Detroit cops who left have already come back. They didn't want to leave. They've come back from Livonia and Farmington Hills and Ann Arbor. One of them just came back from Atlanta, and another 20 have already got their paperwork to follow them. They want to be part of this city, and we're going to fill these positions. They're joining a remarkable coordinated effort that Dawn Eisen and the Fed is leading, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is leading with the federal agencies with a great partnership. And this afternoon, I just left a group led by County Executive Warren Evans. That backlog in the cases, we have to get it solved. It's not anybody's fault, but if you could see how well the entire system is coming together, the County Executive, Prosecutor Worthy, Chief Judge Bill McConaughey at 36th District Court has been phenomenal, and now the new Chief Judge of the Circuit Court, Patricia Frizard, has jumped into this to solve it, along with Chief White, Ray Washington, the Sheriff, the Clerk, Kathy Garrett, and the State Corrections Director. But here's what they're all committed to do: a prompt and fair adjudication of all those pending cases to get rid of the backlog. Those steps are all important. But here's the question that we have to ask. The kind of violence that we are seeing here, is it's just hard to get your mind around. Two guys beefing with each other, and this is what it so often is. One of them decides to drive down a neighborhood street at 9 in the morning to shoot at the person he's beefing with. Of course, misses his target, hits a 2-year-old girl, hits a 55-year-old neighbor who happened to be fixing his car. And by the grace of God, the two of them both fully recovered. But you're saying, what is going on? Two teenagers beefing on social media. They go up to a gas station and one kills a 15-year-old. Over what? You have two neighbors beefing about the parties that are going on at the houses, and finally one of the neighbors goes in with an automatic and shoots 6 people into the house at the neighbor's party. And here's what these things have in common. We don't care enough about each other. We don't value each other enough to say we're not going to take a life for that. And the Detroit police are very good at taking the gun out of the shooter's hands, but they don't have the ability to take the anger out of the shooter's hearts. And an interesting thing happened during our effort to get ShotSpotter in place, which is an important tool to know immediately where the shots are fired. But some of the community groups came to me and said, this ShotSpotter is great, but you need something more. That's after the gun's been fired. You need me. I'm a shot stopper. I said, really? Is that possible? Is it possible you get community groups to intervene to be shot stoppers? And so we're going to give it a try. We're going to partner with community activist groups with history of gun violence, and we're going to give them targeted areas. And I want to thank Councilman Fred Durhal and his Violent Crime Task Force for their effort on this. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to try this in a way nobody has. We're going to say to the group, if you want to bid on this, you pick an area. 3 to 4 miles. This is the map of the city. The red zones are the violence zones. We know this. Not every neighborhood has a significant violence problem. There's a handful of concentrated areas, but if you look back 5 years, Todd Benison says it's the same neighborhoods. What if we took groups that are from that neighborhood, that know the history, know the families, know the dispute, know the trauma that folks have lived there? Could they reach out and diffuse some of this? Whether it's the west side or you pick a neighborhood on your east side. This is what we're going to try. And I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try to do this by holding these groups accountable for their own theory. And so tomorrow, we're releasing proposals to spend up to $10 million on the folks that we're calling shot stoppers. And if you want to get together with a group of others in your particular neighborhood, because you have the strength, you can put in a proposal and pick your gun violence zone. Where do you have the strongest ties? Where do you think you can have the most impact? And we're going to measure you on whether the shootings go up or down. We'll give you time, a 2-year contract, at $700,000 a year, so that you can get embedded. And here's the other thing. If your shootings go down, we'll give you another $700,000 a year to expand your programs. You succeed, and you get more funds. And so we're going to see this play out where I believe, our strongest, most tied-in groups will take responsibility for an area. What happens if you get the police and the courts and the community activists working together? Can we change the hearts? Can we diffuse the anger in some of these neighborhoods? This is what we're going to try in the next year. And one of the reasons I think shot stoppers might work is we're at a time where there's opportunity, where you can place people into jobs and training and new courses. We've got 8,400 jobs open today, and half of them don't need college. Detroit today has the lowest unemployment rate in more than 20 years, the lowest poverty rate in 17 years. And this is what I would say to our citizens. We need every one of you, because here's how far we've come in a decade. In 2012, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said we had 48,000 unemployed Detroiters, and we have 4,000 openings. In 2012, there were 12 job seekers for every job. I don't care how bad you wanted to work in 2012. You couldn't find a job in the city then. But 10 years later, here's the last number from last year. 17,000 unemployed, 9,000 job vacancies. There's 2 job seekers for every job. And we're going to make sure Detroiters get those jobs. So Nicole Sherrod-Freeman and her team have 9 Detroit at Work offices in your neighborhood. They've created a career guide with 50 training programs. And we're backed by Joe Biden and $100 million in scholarships from the American Rescue Plan. And I have to say this. I never in my life thought that the president would call me and ask me to come to the Oval Office to talk about how to do city rescue packages. But I got a chance to help design this. And then just last month, Gene Sperling, the top advisor, came in and said the City of Detroit Scholarship Program, the White House is looking at as a national model. We are going to make sure our residents get these opportunities. And so if you need literacy class, you want to learn to read, not only will we give you the classes, we'll pay you $200 a week to learn to read, either going into class or you can do it from home and we'll provide you the laptop. If you don't have a high school degree, you can make up to $200 a week taking your classes. Your earnings power are so much greater. 100 have already graduated. These are exciting events. Our Skills for Life scholars are training right now for jobs at $17 to $25 an hour in the 50 different training programs. And if you have a criminal record that's eligible for expungement, our Clean Slate program will be your lawyer, as we've done 3,000 times. We'll erase that criminal background and give you a fresh start on your career. That's because you live in the city of Detroit. You've been unemployed for 6 months? You've given up hope? Our Jumpstart scholarships will help you with life expenses for your first 18 months. So I need child care. My car's broken down. I'm behind in my rent. We'll start you out with $600 a month to help you jumpstart. And you won't be alone. 18 community groups will be there to partner with you to help you through it every step of the way, because we need every single Detroiter. I can keep getting these companies to come back into the city, but we've got to have Detroiters fill in those jobs, and there is a place for you in a career that you want. And the credit, again, goes to council members. Coleman Young II and Mary Waters, they were the ones that first came with this to me and wanted to have this program. So you can see it right now, DetroitAtWork.com, and sign up for the programs. So in just 10 years, how did Detroit go from 12 unemployed for every open job to just 2? Well, we brought thousands of jobs back into the city. The Fiat Chrysler plant alone brought more than 4,000 jobs, good-paying jobs with benefits. 1,000 workers now at GM's Factory Zero. 1,200 new jobs at Amazon. They started hiring last month at the State Fairgrounds. Thousands more at the other auto suppliers that came in to support the GM and Chrysler and Ford assembly plants. In healthcare, Henry Ford continues to expand and hire. We're bringing the tech jobs into the city. Banking and financial services, and I'm so appreciative of Gary Torgo, who moved the Huntington Bank headquarters and the Huntington jobs into the city, providing thousands more opportunity, food, hospitality, and thousands of jobs in construction. We had to beat out other cities and states every single time. And I want to talk to you tonight about how we do that. And I want to talk about tax abatements, because it's been a central part of our strategy, and it's going to need to be going forward. And I know in State of the City, you don't supposed to talk about tax policy, but I think people in the city need to understand how it works. And so here's the truth. Without abatements, we've got the highest commercial effective tax rate in the country, nearly twice as high in the suburbs. If you own a house, you're a homeowner, you have an abatement. It's your personal residence exemption. It might be an NEZ exemption. If you're below the poverty level in Detroit, you have a full abatement and a HOPE exemption. But here's what the businesses who are looking to locate are facing every day. They can go to Troy and pay 50 mills, Auburn Hills and pay 53, or Detroit and pay 87. There is a reason why Detroit was not succeeding for so long. But here's a fact check. You hear people say, oh, they got money to give to the billionaires. Why can't they put it in this neighborhood? No, that's not true. We don't give any money. We don't give any cash. A tax abatement is a discount. So you build a new business, you're going to have new taxes. We just give you a discount on the new taxes that you're going to pay. If we don't give you a discount, every single time the company comes down to it, they're going to look and say, I can be a lot better off in another community. Tax incentives turn the abandoned Cadillac stamping into the new Lear seating plant. They turn the abandoned Kettering School into the Dakota Dashboard Factory with 500 jobs today. They helped turn the 40-year abandoned Hudson site into what Dan Gilbert is now building as the second tallest building in Michigan. And this long abandoned storefront on McNichols was turned into Marcus Jones's new Detroit pizza bar because he had the advantage of the incentives. And this 40-year abandoned apartment building on Marlboro is now new and filled because of incentives. And this isn't new. Tax abatements have been needed to bring jobs back to Detroit for decades. And here's what Mayor Coleman Young said. In 1981, he was running for his third term for re-election against Perry Kozlowski, the guy he labeled Perry Who. And throughout that campaign, Perry Kozlowski said, Mayor Young's giving all these tax abatements away to millionaires. And here's what Coleman Young said in 1981. I make no apologies for tax abatements. The 116 companies that have received abatements have invested nearly $500 million of their own money in Detroit. And of even greater importance, I believe, are the 3,000 new jobs we brought to Detroit. 40 years ago, Coleman Young understood that when you have a good-paying company with good-paying jobs and benefits, every city and state wants them. This is hand-to-hand combat to get these companies into Detroit so that our residents can get them, and nothing has changed today. And I want to show you where we would be without those incentives. Those buildings I just showed you, does this look familiar? This is Detroit 10 years ago. That's how all those buildings looked. And here's how they look today, with thousands of new jobs back in the city. So let's talk about the biggest project of all, District Detroit. So what is District Detroit? This is going to be the largest scale of new construction Detroit has seen since the 1920s. That's not a misprint. It's been 100 years. Dan Gilbert has filled up a lot of buildings and is building a high-rise. Gary Torgo has built the new Huntington headquarters and the high-rise apartments. But this is going to be 10 projects, 6 brand-new mid-rise and high-rise projects coming out of the ground. It has been before the Depression we saw that many buildings going up in downtown. And it's going to take these vacant parking lots that everybody's complained about. How many times you heard all the elections have are these vacant parking lots? And it's going to turn them into 4 new office buildings and 2 new hotels and 695 apartments, downtown luxury apartments that are going to accept Section 8 vouchers. I mean, is that remarkable? So the Illiches have finished a number of new buildings in District Detroit, but they realized for something of this magnitude, you need a whole different level of developer. And so they went to a fella who is America's largest developer, Stephen Ross. You want to know about Stephen Ross? He grew up on LaSalle Street near McNichols in the city of Detroit. He went to Mumford High, graduated Wayne State Law School. All right, Marshall Bullock is clapping somewhere. All right. He left Detroit in his 20s and started a new affordable housing real estate business, and today that company he started is America's largest real estate development group, the Related Companies. He's who's coming back. But when he came back, he didn't come back starting with development. The first thing he started by saying is, with all that's happening with the auto industry and the fight with Silicon Valley, we need a University of Michigan graduate school in downtown Detroit. And Stephen Ross started by writing $100 million of his personal funds to bring the University of Michigan into the city, right across from Cass Tech. No abatements, no incentives. And while I'm on Michigan, thank you to our new president, Santa Ono, who has now bought into this project the way the University of Michigan should. It is going to happen. So when it's fully built, what does it mean? It means $1.5 billion in investment, 12,000 construction jobs, 6,000 permanent jobs, which is why I was pleased to see the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, who heard on this, the people who live there, just voted to approve the project. Now, here's what you hear about. They're asking for $800 million in tax discounts over the next 35 years. How much is that going to cost me? Well, If you're a City of Detroit taxpayer, it's going to cost you $0. Coming out of Detroit school taxes, $0. Coming out of Detroit library taxes, $0. So where's the $800 million coming from? Well, $400 million of it is coming to taxes that get paid to the Downtown Development Authority, which by state law, those taxes cannot be used outside of Detroit. They can't be used in the neighborhood for the general fund. You might say, well, gee, that must be something new, right? We're being mayor and council now being criticized. In fact, it's been that way since 1975. In 1975, Mayor Coleman Young convinced Lansing to pass the Downtown Development Act to capture the property taxes downtown, because he looked out and saw the city built out, and he said, the city of Detroit is never going to be able to survive on the property taxes. They're going the wrong way. The only way the city has a financial future is to get businesses here and build off the income taxes. And that's why he passed the legislation. So 40 years later, was his vision right? Well, here are this year's budgeted revenues: $135 million in city property taxes and $395 million in city income taxes. 40 years later, we continue to benefit from a mayor who had the foresight to put the community first in spite of the criticism. Okay, so $400 million comes from the DDA. Where's the other $400 million come from? Comes from the state of Michigan. They actually rebate part of the income taxes paid by the workers. But of course, the state's going to come out way ahead with the 12,000 construction jobs and the 6,000 permanent jobs instead of a bunch of parking lots. They're going to do just fine. But that $800 million doesn't come from the city. But here is the bottom line from the city. Today, from those parking lots in that area, you know how much the city of Detroit gets every year on this property? $249,000. We get some income taxes from the parking valets. We get some utility taxes for the parking lights. When this project is built out, the city general fund will get $21 million a year. And that is the money that we can put into the police and the parks and the community programs. It'll be there for the general fund. And that's why we are pushing so hard. This is going to be a great project for the city's future. But that's not the only one. We had another major community benefits process, and I love this community benefits process. The neighbors get to have a committee and decide on this, and that's the Fisher Body Plan. Greg Jackson and Richard Hosey proposed to transform, there you go, 435 apartments. Largest black real estate development in the city's history. They went through the same process, met with the neighbors, and the neighbors on that project agreed as well. In August, City Council gave them unanimous support to move forward on this so that this beautiful project is going to be done by Detroiters for Detroiters. And when I stood here a year ago, I talked to you about the fact that we have progressed from the point where it's only a few people doing the development. In fact, we have developers from this community building across the city. I showed you $500 million in development projects owned and being built by black Detroiters, and the progress has been remarkable. And let me show you what we're doing. The United Artists Building, abandoned for 40 years. This is another building Detroit City Council years ago voted to demolish. But today, Emmett Moten and Richard Hosey and the whole team of Detroiters are building it. The work's going on with 150 new apartments in this downtown landmark. A year ago, I told you Sylvester Hester was competing for a seating plant to supply Ford trucks. And he has now landed that contract and is opened up on the site of the old Southwestern High School with 400 workers right here in the city of Detroit. And this vacant lot at Garfield and John R., Sonia May's finished with 68 new apartments on that site. We told you a year ago there'd be a black-owned Detroit Food Commons promised for the North End. You can drive right up Woodward and see it. It's under construction and going to be open this year. And George Namdi and Rod Hardiman said, we're going to take this vacant eyesore on Grand River and we're going to build affordable housing. And you can see the construction going on now to be built later this year. This is what is happening across the city. We have black ownership and black development rebuilding our community. And then there's new projects we haven't talked about. Amin Irving took this beautiful land on East Jefferson, and he's putting 150 units of affordable housing on the riverfront. So these developments help us pay for things that we've always wanted to do. Like this building here, the Dexter Elmhurst Rec Center, a building which had been long gone if it hadn't been for Helen Moore and the force of her personality. But she didn't have the resources to do what she wanted, but we came together and partnered. And next year it will be open as a brand new Dexter Elmhurst Recreation Center. I know Fred Durhall will be there cutting the ribbon. But we're building a new sports dome in Chandler Park. We're going to expand Farwell Center to add a gymnasium. We're going to replace the abandoned Lennox Center in Jefferson Chalmers. You can see where it's being demolished and a new center is being built. And in this case, we had the generous support of Roger Penske, who put in $5 million so Jefferson Chalmers would once again have a community center. And Tom Goris, Aaron Tellem, and the Pistons are taking the Brennan Pool site that right now we can only use a few months for the summer and building a $20 million recreation center in Rouge Park for that area of this community. We're generating funds to invest in our children. Very proud of the fact that 4,000 Detroiters are attending college today because they live and went to high school in the city of Detroit. And if you are a Detroiter, you graduate from Detroit High School, you get accepted to a community college, your tuition is paid for 2 years. Any one of a number of 4-year schools you get accepted, it's paid for 12 years. And you can sign up at the DetroitPromise.com. 8,000 young people are going to be employed again this summer. We're making sure our young people have a good opportunity. Our firefighters deserve better physical conditions to live and work, and we're going to put $13 million into repair 15 firehouses. Our DDOT drivers are underpaid, and we are going to raise their pay and get another 100 buses on the road when we get these drivers hired. We're going to get this done. And we've increased funding to Detroiters who want to start small businesses, up to $1 million a quarter with council support. And yes, that's Joe Biden on the right hand. When he was vice president, this program attracted Motor City Match such national attention, he came down and passed out the awards himself one quarter. He loves this stuff. We'll get it back. Now 144 businesses are open in the city through Motor City Match, 58 under construction, and 77% are minority owned. We're giving opportunities to people who might not have had them. And I was really pleased at Baobab Fair that just won the competition at Shop and an Esquire. This is a company in a vacant building on Grand Boulevard and Woodward that had been empty for years and now is open because they had help from Motor City Match and now is attracting national attention. This is the kind of talent that we have in the city of Detroit, and Motor City Match is giving them the resources to pursue their dreams and making all of our lives richer as a result. We are also being intentional and making sure Detroiters have ownership in all new businesses, including cannabis. In 2008, the voters of Michigan legalized medical marijuana. And over 50 medical facilities opened in Detroit, but only 4 were opened by Detroiters. The marijuana stores were opened, the Detroiters were customers, and others were the owners taking the profits. And then, in 2018, the voters legalized recreational marijuana. Great, right? Except, you know who wrote the language that went on the ballot? It was the medical marijuana owners. And they said for 2 years, the only people who can get a recreational license are people who are already operating a medical marijuana facility, which meant you would have had 46 out of 50 permanently being owned by non-Detroiters. And so, again, there are people who want the mayor and council to fight. This is a case where we didn't fight. Our very great council member, James Tate, said, I ain't voting to license these things if Detroiters aren't going to get their share. And he and I stood shoulder to shoulder and said, we'll take whatever criticism. Detroiters are going to have ownership. We got sued 6 times. I am not exaggerating. 6 separate lawsuits by people trying to preserve non-Detroiters' advantage. We stood shoulder to shoulder every time. And when we won in court, we reopened the licensing process. And here was the interesting thing. Councilman Tate and I, that year we were in suits, we didn't waste the time. We realized that the people who had the medical facilities were all ready to go. We used that year and we held seminars for all the Detroit applicants, helped them get sites, helped them get financing. So when finally the court released the injunction, the delay backfired. Because in December we issued our first 34 recreational marijuana licenses, 56% owned by Detroiters, 50% owned by African Americans. We want outside investment. We welcome investment from outside the city. But Detroiters have to have a fair share of the ownership and participate in a fair share of the profits. That's all we ask for, and it's what we've gotten by standing together and fight. But that's how hard you've got to work in order to make sure the residents of the city get their opportunities. And there's no issue on which we've been more united than affordable housing. In May of 2020, all the prediction, mass eviction crisis, Detroit, it was coming. Didn't happen. It didn't happen because we acted decisively. With the help of Joe Biden and federal money, we hired lawyers and put them in courtrooms. There's talk about right to counsel now. I started right to counsel in 2020. We put 25 lawyers in courtrooms, and we stopped 10,000 evictions at the height of COVID. We helped another 20,000 families get assistance with back rent. And now that the federal money is winding down, we need to find a way to continue that. And if you get an eviction notice, you shouldn't pay attention to some of the media that might mislead you. There's a lawyer there waiting for you. Go to court. Don't accept a default. We will be there to support you. And Council President Mary Sheffield deserves enormous credit for sponsoring this right to counsel legislation from the beginning. And Dan and Jennifer Gilbert put $13 million in to keep that legal representation going. This is what happens when we all work together, and we're going to continue to do what we need to do, that those who are being unfairly evicted have representation. And we're going to be going, our great speaker Joe Tate and the head of the Detroit delegation, Tyrone Carter, going up to Lansing because Detroit isn't going to be able to afford to do this alone. And Council and I will be up asking for your help. But we protect affordable housing. When the affordable housing is in risk of being lost, we step in and we preserve 7,900 units, 2,000 in progress. We don't have what's happening in other cities where when the affordable housing lapses from the federal government, it goes market rate and people get kicked out. Every single time, Donald Rensher and Julie Schneider in our housing department make them a new deal. And we preserve these 7,900 all across the city. Then we built 1,500 new affordable units because we know what the other cities in America are seeing when you don't act. This is the scene in many of our cities, but in Detroit, you have a mayor and council committed to affordable housing. That's why I was pleased last year when council members Waters and Johnson and Callaway and Santiago Romero partnered on a new $203 million affordable housing initiative. And does it seem like we've got a new housing announcement every week? It's true. The last 12 weeks, we've had 12 different affordable housing, either groundbreakings or ribbon cuttings. We're building at a rate the rest of the country envies. And this month, we know it's not enough. Property values keep rising in Detroit, which means people are going to be pressured in higher rent. We have to work together to stay ahead of this, and so I'll be sending City Council a request to commit $31 million more of ARPA funds to build and preserve 600 more units in 13 properties. And given our history, I'm sure there is going to be unanimous support. We are going to continue to stay ahead of this problem. I continue to see this world through the eyes of the people whose homes I shared in 2013, night after night, with them telling me about the shopping districts where they used to be able to go for a cup of coffee. The neighbors that used to be in that house across the street. And I told them we would bring the beauty back to every corner of the city. And we took the Avenue of Fashion on Livernois, and we went and rebuilt it on the west side to one of the nicest commercial strips anywhere in Michigan. You can't find a parking space on Friday and Saturday night. And also, then we went around the corner to West McNichols, all abandoned storefronts. and rebuilt that into a vibrant commercial district with lots of businesses opening up again. This is what we're doing in the neighborhoods. West Warren is being rebuilt right as we speak into a beautiful district near the Dearborn border. On the east side, there weren't too many neighborhoods more run down than Van Dyke and Kirchville. You went down that Kirchville corridor, which I've had reason to do every day, going to and from work. There wasn't much going on, but today it's one of the most vibrant corridors in the city. And East Warren is being rebuilt right now over by Cadieux into the kind of great district in the neighborhood where my father grew up, and a district that he would have recognized. In southwest Detroit, a place that's really never had the kind of park system they deserve on this abandoned land, we have built a world-class riverside park so that people of that community can enjoy the waterfront. Neighborhoods that thought they'd been forgotten. Rosa Parks in Claremont, a historic site to every Detroiter, is being rebuilt right now. And immediately next door, the first thing you see, a vacant apartment building is now being restored with new apartments, because when you start to rebuild the streetscape, people start to invest in the neighborhoods. And on Dexter Avenue, I said all along, when Dexter Avenue comes back, I will start to feel good. And now I'm spending a lot of time on Dexter Avenue because we are seeing real life and real investment coming into that community. State fairgrounds have been left abandoned for more than a decade. And now we're building a place of employment and beauty. We saw the rebuilding of Campus Martius now into what U.S. News, USA Today just called America's greatest town square. In DTE, this was Beacon Park, and now it's a beautiful park. This is what we are doing in this city. This is a city I remember, Detroit, that was great. But here's something I don't remember, a riverfront that was beautiful. And now, I didn't know growing up we had a riverfront. But now it's something that families from all incomes and all parts of this community enjoy. And so nobody who is here will forget July 18th, 2013. It was the day the city of Detroit declared bankruptcy. National embarrassment, largest city in America to go into bankruptcy. And this is the picture that went out across the country. The abandoned train station, the sign of hopelessness in Detroit, all the jokes on the nightly news, last one out of Detroit, please turn out the light. Where we are standing right now was a national symbol of despair. We're going to invite those folks back this July. Because this July, this site is going to be the center of one of the most exciting cities in all of America. God bless you, Detroit. Good evening. All right. Thank you.
Standing ovation at Michigan Central Station following Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan's 10th State of the City address from inside that beautifully restored grand lobby of the former train station. The mayor, in his address tonight, touching on the impact of the decision by Bill Ford Jr. to purchase the train station and Ford Motor Company's plans for electric vehicles, joining with General Motors and Stellantis in the drive for the automotive future here in Detroit. The mayor also spoke about the ongoing success of transitioning blight to beauty. Next steps include fixing broken sidewalks, cleaning alleys, clearing vacant lots, and expanding the neighborhood beautification program. As housing costs rise, there's a new plan to bring additional affordable housing to Detroit. In May, an effort will launch giving abandoned land bank houses to organizations that promise to make them into affordable housing units. The mayor also talked about a new $10 million commitment in a new violence prevention initiative, again focused on neighborhoods utilizing shot stopper technology to fight crime. And Duggan highlighted efforts in neighborhoods and his 10-point plan to continue improvements into and through 2023. He touted increased home values in the city, as well as the lowest unemployment rate in Detroit in 20 years. He also updated the black development and ownership happening right now in Detroit, and Mayor Duggan says there is much more to come. We'll continue to follow this tonight on Action News at 10 on TV 20 and right back here at 11. Have a great evening.